Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're boldly going where, well, someone's probably gone before. We're looking at Star Trek Voyager, specifically the episode Time and Again.
Ah, yes.
It's a story about a planet meeting a rather unfortunate end.
Yeah.
Thanks to something called polaric energy.
Polaric energy.
But, as we'll see, it also kind of throws in this whole time travel paradox thing and makes us ask some pretty tough questions.
Right, like what happens when the Prime Directive, Starfleet's big rule about non-interference bumps up against a situation where you might actually be able to, prevent a disaster.
Right. Heavy stuff. So to set the scene, Voyager comes across this M-class planet. Now, for anyone who's not fluent in Star Trek lingo, that basically means a planet that could support life like Earth.
Yeah.
But this one, well, it's not exactly teeming with life. It's more like a cosmic ghost town, a wasteland, really.
Yeah, you see these remnants of what was clearly once a pretty advanced civilization. Buildings, technology, the whole works. But no life.
Zupuk. And to make things even creepier, Tease, who, if you remember, is an Okampa and has this empathic thing going on, she starts getting these visions.
Oh, right. Peas.
Intense visions of the planet's destruction.
Like a premonition, almost.
Exactly. And that's when things start getting really weird. Tom Paris, our pilot, the guy who always seems to find trouble, he experiences this thing, this
temporal shift.
Yes, a temporal shift. And for a brief moment, he sees the planet as it was before the destruction, all bustling and full of life. It's like those before and after photos, but, cosmic scale.
And tragic. Before you have this vibrant civilization, and then poof, wasteland.
Poof, indeed. So the episode explains all this with, what were they called? Subspace fractures.
Yeah, subspace fractures, basically like cracks in time, caused by the planet's destruction. They're, a bit unstable, and as you might guess, Janeway and Paris end up trapped in one.
Of course they do.
And get zapped back to the day before the planet goes boom.
Talk about bad timing. So now they're stuck on this seemingly peaceful planet, but with this knowledge, this doom hanging over them. And as they, start poking around, they learn that this civilization runs on
polaric energy?
Right, polaric energy. Their version of nuclear power, I guess, but maybe not as well, mastered.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Incredibly potent, but, well, potentially unstable, which is causing some major anxiety, and understandably so.
So they skip right over fossil fuels and jump straight to this super advanced but risky energy source.
Pretty much, yeah. And as you can imagine, not everyone is thrilled about it.
Right.
Protests, debates, the whole 9 yards. Janeway and Paris even run into this group led by this guy, McCool, who are absolutely convinced that polaric energy is going to destroy the planet. It's not a matter of if, but when, in their view.
So they're like, I guess you could call them activists, but pretty extreme ones. They're planning to sabotage a power plant to, prove their point.
They believe it's the only way to wake people up to the danger. And here's where things get really interesting from a time travel perspective.
Right. Because it turns out that by trying to investigate the destruction, Janeway and Paris have actually become part of the chain of events that lead to it.
Exactly. Their presence on the planet influences McCool's group to move up their sabotage schedule.
Yeah.
Classic self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mind-blowing. So they accidentally cause the very thing they're trying to prevent. Makes you wonder about free will and all that.
Right. Are we really in control of our choices, or are we just playing out a script that's already written?
Meanwhile, back on Voyager, the crew's in a frenzy trying to get Janeway and Paris back. They're using that polaric generator thing to try to create their own subspace fractures.
But it's like trying to hit a moving target in the middle of a temporal storm. Not easy.
And this is where Keyes' empathy comes in, right?
Yeah, she's able to sense Janeway across time and space. It's pretty remarkable. And she guides the away team to the power plant right before,
Right before everything goes kaboom. Talk about cutting it close. It's a race against time at this point, with Janeway trying to stop McCool, the Voyager crew trying to rescue them, and the planet just ticking away like a time bomb.
Yeah.
So what happens next? Do they manage to pull it off? Do they escape the blast?
Well, for that, you have to wait for part 2. We'll be right back after a short break.
Don't go anywhere. We've got more time travel twists and turns coming your way. All right, we're back, and things are about to get even more intense.
Oh, yeah. Last we left off, Janeway and Paris were stuck on this doomed planet, racing against time to stop a sabotage that would trigger its destruction. And the Voyager crew was trying to beam them back before it all went kaboom.
Talk about a tense situation. But before we get to that, I wanted to circle back to something we mentioned earlier, that journalist Latika. He really stood out to me.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character. This young, driven journalist, determined to get the scoop, even with the planet literally falling apart around him.
He doesn't buy Janeway and Paris' story for a second. I mean, who would? We're from another planet trying to save you from a disaster that we might have accidentally caused.
Yeah, that's a tough sell.
Yeah.
But his persistence pays off, and he ends up uncovering their true identities.
Which puts Janeway and Paris in an even trickier spot. But it also raises this question about the role of the media. Even in a crisis, the pursuit of truth, holding those in power accountable, it's still important.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that a free press, even in a society on the brink, is vital.
For sure. Okay, so back to our time-traveling duo. They're now facing this impossible choice. They know the sabotage is going to happen. They know it'll lead to the planet's destruction.
But they're also bound by the Prime Directive, Starfleet's big rule about non-interference.
Right, and they've already messed with the timeline once just by being there. It's like that butterfly effect, right? One small change can have these massive consequences down the line.
It really makes you think about the ripple effects of our actions, intended or not. How even trying to do good can sometimes backfire in ways we can't predict.
Whoa. Heavy stuff.
It is. Oh.
So, are they basically responsible for the planet's destruction, even if they didn't, set off the bomb themselves?
That's the question that haunts Janeway throughout the episode.
Yeah.
She wants to follow the Prime Directive, but she also can't just stand by and watch an entire civilization be wiped out.
Especially when they played a role in setting those events in motion. What a dilemma.
A classic moral tightrope walk.
And her final decision, to stop the Voyager crew from beaming them back, it's heartbreaking. She chooses to sacrifice herself and Paris to prevent the disaster.
A truly selfless act.
Yeah.
But it also raises questions about her authority, right? Did she have the right to make that choice for her crew? They didn't exactly volunteer for a one-way trip to the past.
And what about those left behind on Voyager? What must they be going through? It's gut-wrenching.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even the toughest choices often come with painful consequences.
So the planet's saved, but at a huge cost. But wait, doesn't the timeline reset at the end?
Right. Voyager encounters the planet again, and this time, Case gets those premonitions of its destruction.
Oh, man. So they're back to square one, knowing what's going to happen, but now even more bound by the Prime Directive, having seen the chaos they caused by interfering.
This agonizing loop, this cycle of knowing and not knowing, of action and inaction.
It makes you think, what would you do in that situation, knowing a planet is doomed but forbidden to interfere?
It's a question that stays with you. And it leads us to some even bigger questions about our relationship with technology, the limits of our knowledge, and, well, the very nature of time itself.
So let's dive into some of those bigger questions as we continue our deep dive into Time and Again. What are some of the key takeaways, the things that really resonated with you?
Well, one thing that stood out was the parallel between polaric energy in the episode and our own real-world relationship with, well, energy in general. This civilization had this incredibly powerful resource, but they hadn't quite mastered it, and it led to anxiety, division, and ultimately destruction.
Yeah, it's like they jumped ahead to this super advanced technology without considering the risks.
Right. It makes you think about our own advancements in things like nuclear power, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering.
We have all this power, but are we really ready for it? Are we thinking about the long-term consequences?
That's the big question, isn't it? And Time and Again really forces us to confront it.
Totally. Another thing that really struck me was the journalist, Latika. He's so determined to uncover the truth, even when it puts him in danger.
Yeah, he's a great example of the importance of a free press, of holding those in power accountable, especially when things get tough.
He reminds us that we need to be informed, engaged citizens, to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, to seek out the truth.
Even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Time and Again, what's the one big question you want our listeners to walk away with? The thing that will keep them thinking long after the episode is over?
I think it comes down to this. Do we have a right to intervene in the fate of others, even with the best of intentions? And if so, where do we draw the line? It's not an easy question, but it's one worth wrestling with.
Absolutely. It makes you think about responsibility, about the limits of our knowledge, and about the consequences, both intended and unintended, of our actions.
And it reminds us that even in fiction, in a show like Star Trek, we can find these profound reflections of our own lives and our place in the universe.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride through time, space, and some seriously thought-provoking territory.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, and maybe even left you with a few questions of your own. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it really makes you think, like, what would I do, if I were in that situation?
Oh, absolutely. Time and again, it's like a giant thought experiment.
Right. It throws you into this impossible situation and asks, what would you do? There's no easy answer.
No, and I feel like that's part of what makes it so compelling.
Exactly. It makes you really examine your own beliefs about right and wrong, about responsibility.
Yeah. And I bet I'd be second-guessing myself the whole time.
Oh, for sure.
But I guess that's the point, right?
I think so. Time travel.
Yeah.
And meddling with other civilizations, there are no easy answers.
No. You could really mess things up with the best of intentions.
It's that saying, what is it? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
Even when you're trying to do the right thing, who knows what might happen?
Yeah.
Unexpected consequences.
Exactly. And sometimes the best you can hope for is to just make the least bad choice.
Yeah. Learning to live with uncertainty.
Okay, so let's step back from the edge of the philosophical cliff for a second.
Okay.
What are some of the things we can take away from this episode? Time and again. I mean, it's backed with stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even beyond the time travel.
Definitely. For me, one thing that really struck me was how the episode kind of reflects our own relationship with energy.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, the civilization in the episode, they're facing this dilemma, this incredible power source.
Polaric energy.
Right. But they haven't figured out how to control it safely. And it causes all this anxiety.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Like, they made this leap to super advanced technology, but without really thinking about the risks.
Exactly. And ultimately, it leads to their downfall.
Which I guess is a cautionary tale for us, right? I mean, think about things like nuclear power, even climate change. We have all this power at our fingertips, but...
But are we really ready for it?
Are we using it responsibly?
Yeah. Big questions. And time and again really makes you think about them.
It does. Another thing that stood out to me was, well, I mentioned him before, that journalist, Latika.
Oh, yeah.
He's relentless in his search for the truth, even when it's dangerous.
He's a great example of how important a free press is. Speaking truth to power,
Holding people accountable.
Exactly. He reminds us we need to be informed, engaged citizens. We can't just sit back and let things happen.
We have to ask questions.
Yeah.
Challenge assumptions.
Exactly. Seek out the truth.
Even when it's hard.
Especially when it's hard.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into time and again, what's the one big question you hope our listeners will be thinking about?
That's a good one. I think it boils down to this. Do we have the right to interfere in the fate of others, even if we think we're doing the right thing?
That's a tough one.
It is. And if so, where do we draw the line? It's a question without an easy answer, but it's a question we need to keep asking ourselves.
It makes you think about responsibility, about the limits of what we know, and about the consequences of our actions. Both the ones we intend and the ones we don't.
And it reminds us that even in fiction, even in a show like Star Trek, there are these really profound reflections of our own lives.
Yeah, and our place in the universe. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. It's been quite a journey through time, space, and some pretty heavy ethical dilemmas.
It has. I've really enjoyed exploring all this with you.
Me too. And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed it as well. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.